girl put her arm around his neck and looked into his eye, but she could see nothing. "I think it is gone," he said, but it was not gone. It was one of those bits of the looking glass, the magic mirror which we have spoken of. The ugly glass which made everything great and good appear small and ugly, while all that was wicked and bad looked more visible. The very little faults could be plainly seen. Poor little Kay had also received a small grain in his heart, which very quickly turned to a lump of ice. He felt no more pain, but the glass was still there. "Why do you cry?" said he at last. "It makes you look ugly. There is nothing the matter with me now. See," he cried suddenly. "That rose is worm-eaten, and this one is quite crooked. After all, they are ugly roses. Just like the box in which they stand." And then he kicked the box with his foot and pulled off 2 roses. "Kay, what are you doing?" cried the little girl. And then when he saw how frightened she was, he tore off another rose and jumped through his own window away from little Grinda. When she afterwards brought out the picture book, he said it was only fit for babies in long clothes. And when grandmother told any stories, he would interrupt her with "but," or, and he could manage it. He would get behind her chair, put on a pair of spectacles, and imitate her very cleverly. To make people laugh, by and by he began to mimic the speech and gains of persons on the street. All that was particular or disagreeable, any person he would imitate directly, and people said, "That boy will be very clever. He has a remarkable genius." It was the piece of glass in his eye and the coldness in his heart that made him act like this. He would even tease little Grinda, who loved him with all her heart. His games, too, were quite different. They were not so childish. One winter day, when it snowed, he brought out a burning glass. Then he held out the tail of his blue cat and let the snowflakes fall upon it. "Look at this glass, Grinda," he said. And she saw how every flake of snow was magnified and looked like a beautiful flower or a glittering star. "Is it not clever?" said Kay, "and much more interesting than looking at a real flower. There is not a single fault in it. The snowflakes are quite perfect till they begin to melt." Soon after, Kay made his appearance in a large, thick glove, and with his sled at his back, he called upstairs to Grinda, "I've got to leave to go into the great square where the other boys play and ride." And away he went. In the great square, the boldest among the boys would often tie their sleds to the country's people's carts and go with them with a good way. This was capital, but while they were all amusing themselves, and Kay with them, a great sled came by. It was painted white, and in it was someone wrapped in white fur and wearing a white cap. The sled drove twice round the square, and Kay fastened his own little sled to it, so that when it went away, he followed it. It went faster and faster right through the next street, and then the person who drove turned around and nodded pleasantly at Kay. just just as if they were acquainted with each other. But whenever Kay wished to loosen his little sled, the driver nodded again. So Kay sat still and they drove out through the town gate.
Okay, so that selection is from The Snow Queen by Hans Christian Andersen. So we are going to go into what we are calling our new segment, 5 Facts. So, Mr. Animated, I think we should start with actually Frozen, and then we can talk more about the facts of Snow Queen, since this week's selection actually was Frozen. Because I want people to be confused. They're like, well, you're reading this book, Snow Queen, but the flyer said Frozen. So I'm going to say, as the adult, the reason why we labeled it Frozen was because everybody's more familiar with Frozen and the franchise that is by Walt Disney. A lot of people did not know that it was actually based off of a book, which, as we told you, was created in 1844, I believe. Was that 44?
Yeah, I think it was 1844.
Yeah, 1844, and it's actually a Danish fairy tale. Hans Christian Andersen, as we stated, created over 3,000 fairy tales, and a lot of these fairy tales have been spun off by the Grimm brothers, which were more of the scary versions of fairy tales and cautionary tales that they used to tell children to keep them to behave, keep them out of the woods, keep them in the home back then. And then some of our more sci-fi horror movies, a lot of them are based off of some of these fairy tales that actually Hans Christian Andersen made. And I think a lot of people don't even know this information. So we want to give you guys some of our 5 facts. So you want to start, or am I starting?
You can start.
I can start? Okay, so real quick, I want to let you guys know about some of the awards real quick. And then we're going to actually talk about the movies and the premises of it. I think a lot of people are very familiar with Frozen, so I don't feel like we have to go too deep into it. But a lot of people, when you hear people talk about Frozen, they talk about how obsessed their kids were with Frozen. So as a young man, I know you're 15, and I know the movie came out in 2013, so that was just what? Oh, barely 6 years ago?
Pretty much.
You know, so as a kid,
I despise Frozen. I do not like Frozen. Frozen 2 I have no problem with, but I'm sorry for anyone who hears this. The first one sucked.
Why did it suck to you? Is it because you're a boy? Or
Too
is it
much singing for me.
So you don't like the singing aspect of it?
No. The song Let It Go was too much for me.
Is it okay? So it's not. I think what it is. I don't think it's the song. I think it's the fact that it was so popular that everywhere you went, you heard it. All the kids literally had it on repeat. So was that what it was, or is it really the song? Because it's a good song, actually.
I mean, I don't really have a problem with the song. It's just the fact of why on repeat? Like, seriously.
I mean, it was kind of catchy. Unfortunately, I guess I would say. It was catchy. I just think that a lot of little girls, you made a comment about how little girls saw themselves in the characters. So I think a lot of little girls, that just resonated with them. And I mean, there's a lot of even professional actors and celebrities that said like their kids were obsessed with Frozen. So even just us regular folk who had kids who literally had it on repeat, we were not alone. I didn't have that happen, luckily, but
I'm glad my sister did.
Frozen, it literally won Best Song, Original Song of the Year, and then I believe it won Grammys for the soundtrack and for the Best Written Song. It won Critics' Choice Movie Awards for the best song. Like, this song won like several awards that year. So that song was huge that it won that many awards.
Okay, so I can actually understand why Frozen got that many songs. I mean, not songs, awards.
Okay.
Because it was catchy, it was original, but I actually want to know how you feel about it. What do you think the message of that song was?
I think the message in the song was what made it resonate. I think for me, as an adult, it was telling kids that it's okay to let their fears go and to be okay with who they are. And the line in it that, I'm not going to let it bother me anyway. I think that was important because there's a lot in our society and culture and community right now. We have a lot of bullying in kids who are committing suicide from bullying. So I think that song was some of this generation's inspiration that it's going to be okay and that it's okay to be different and to be who they are. I think the generation before that, they had like Christina Aguilera and other Pink and other people who had songs that inspired them to just hold on and to be okay. I think every generation has anthems. So I would say for the really younger generation, Let It Go was like their anthem in 2013. Not an anthem.
Not an anthem.
It was an anthem. I mean, these kids was making videos. You saw so many YouTube fan fiction and videos. I mean, you had people naming their babies after Elsa.
I had so many kids at my school just dressing up as either Kristoff, Anna, or Elsa and had a backpack or lunchbox of either of them. I'm sorry. I do not like the original Frozen.
Okay, so you like the second Frozen. Why do you like the second Frozen more? Is it because it's less music or because there wasn't a song that like took off and everybody was singing it?
It's because this one, it actually shows you about why everything is the way it is in their world. Why Elsa has the power she has, why there was so many secrets in the first
Also, we gave a spoiler alert earlier, so let's give another spoiler because we're about to talk about Frozen 2.
Olaf died.
You just have been waiting to be able to say that. Olaf died for a moment, y'all. He came back.
They brought him back in the end.
They brought him back. But I guess my thing is, I get what you're saying. Like, there was more story. I'm going to go back to the first one. What I didn't like about the first one was Anna's character. I felt like they were trying to get the message across that she felt alone because of what happened with their parents and her sister being shut away because of these powers and them not understanding, and they were scared she was going to hurt her again. But they opened the gates, and the first day out, she meets a boy, and she's head over heels in love, and they're going to get married, and they're making hearts with the fingers. That is not realistic. I'm sorry.
No.
I do not approve of that message to little girls that the first guy that smiles at you and blinks at you is like your soulmate. That part I don't agree with. So that's my one thing with the original Frozen movie. I didn't like how that came across, and then for him to be the antagonist or the villain of the movie.
And then try killing her sister.
Right, like,
who does that?
That was a little dramatic. Like, it was a little over dramatic, and I get that the story, it's a kid's story and all of that, but I mean, sheesh.
Don't do all that.
I'm just like, who in the first day out of the house, they fall in love and they plan and they get married, and like, that's just not realistic. And I know we're talking fairy tales. I know we're talking Disney movies, but Disney movies to me have progressed a little bit more than that. And I know it's all about girl power, and shout out to Beyonce because yes, girls run the world, but I mean, come on now. That was just a little over the top for me. Don't choke. Okay, so in the second one, I like that they showed the independence these sisters had and the fact that they had this thing about they wouldn't do something without the other, that they stuck together, and family meant the most. I did like what you said about the origin. They really got a little deeper into that and explained things a little bit more. I don't feel like it was as music. I didn't think it was as much music.
No, there weren't as many songs in the second one as there were in the first, but what I really did not like in the movie was when Elsa decided that she was going to actually just push Anna away, making sure that she didn't go with her.
Oh wow. Okay, so let's start some of our five